the quality of your life is going to be determined by the meaning that you give to your life. And your life consists of everything that is in your environment, in your circumstances, in your results. And environment is people, places, and things. So it's everything that's really surrounding yourself. When you begin to label things from a negative perspective and you label them bad, you're tapping into your own innate power to experience something as a bad thing. Hey everybody, David Nagel here, and we are back to our regular podcast formula here. This is the first podcast that I'm doing outside of the 4-part series and the 8-part series that I'm doing around the coronavirus. But I wanted to get into, so this is actually still around the coronavirus, but more around the situation that affects us because of that virus. And the cool thing about this podcast that I absolutely love, and I hope you love it too, and we'll share it with people, is that I want to talk about some things and get into a little bit deeper on very specific topics over the next few days around things that people are actually dealing with that in the 4-part series I'm not actually really able to cover in depth because I'm trying to grab a much larger concept for everyone there. So hopefully you'll find benefit in these. I think they're very beneficial. Brandon and I really worked hard on selecting what we thought was appropriate to bring to the table during this period of time before we get back to our regular broadcasting schedule. So today I'm gonna talk about something that I've had a few questions on, and actually Brandon suggested that I do this topic, and I thought it was brilliant. I'm gonna call this "How to Grow Spiritually in a Time of Crisis," because I think it's a phenomenal question, and I think that it is literally one of the best times for us to grow. And here's the reason why I think it's such a good time for us to grow. We're in a situation that is causing us to look at ourselves, and we're kind of like forced to look at ourselves versus pretty much any other time in our life. You know, if you think about the normal crises and tragedies that we have just as being human beings, and we all go through, you know, kind of like a normal life, so to speak. When I say normal now, I mean the way things were like 3-4 weeks ago, not like what we're going through now. But if you think about the things that we experience death, we experience illness, we experience other people getting ill, we experience divorce, we experience heartbreak, somebody we love leaves our life. Some people experience child loss, or you know, in the real sense of like losing a child to death for whatever reason. We experience people that get sucked away by substance abuse. We experience job loss. We experience the loss of dreams. You know, these are all things that human beings, and I could probably mention a ton more, but I think you get the point. These are all things that human beings experience that periodically throughout our life cause us to take a kind of a hard look at who we are and what our mistakes may have been, what thinking got us into those situations, how we want to change as human beings, and how we want to come out on the other side of something. This crisis that we're in, being unlike any other crisis that we've ever experienced before, is forcing us to take a look at ourselves for an extended period of time. And some people are doing really, really great, and I'm really happy for those people, and some people are having a really hard time, and then you have, of course, everybody in the middle. But you know, I think we have to remember some very basic spiritual truths that will help us make it through this. And one of the big truths that's very important to understand is that everything is spiritual. So I hear a lot of people talking, just like they talk when things are normal, about how to become more spiritual, how to find your spirituality, how to practice more spiritual things. And the way that it's explained in most cases is almost like spirituality or spiritual things are something that are separate from us, and we kind of have to find them and do them, and then hopefully we get to know our spiritual selves, or the spirit of the world, or whatever you think is spiritual or in tune with God or whatever. I come from a little bit of a different belief system. I believe that everything is spiritual because everything is created from the same source. You can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it energy, call it spirit. It all comes from the same source. So when we're talking about spirituality, everything is spiritual because everything is created within that, or out of that source. And very often people ask the question, and this is a question that is also been debated by the great philosophers and professors in universities and religious theologians for eons. And that is the idea of good and evil. And the truth behind this idea is that good and evil are the opposite sides of each other. They don't exist alone in the universe. Like, there's not one absolute good that is separate from this one absolute evil. They both exist simultaneously as part of each other. So let me explain what I mean by that. The law is basically, when we're talking about anything, okay, that could be a physical thing, it could be a materialistic thing, it could be an etheric thing, it could be an emotional thing, it could be a psychological thing, it could be a thing like the COVID virus, it could be a thing like what we're all individually experiencing because of the COVID virus. All of those things just are. They're neither good nor bad. Now, if we're looking at it, this is if we're looking at it from the perception of spiritual truth. They just are. They're neither good nor bad. Good or bad is a judgment that human beings bring in to give meaning to what it is they're observing in life. So what's fascinating about it is that you'll have people, like there's all kinds of people that disagree about what's good and what's bad in the world. If we understand that they're not two separate things, but they're one in the same, and good, when we look at something and we say it's good, we look at using that thing for the betterment of, say, our life and the lives of other people. When we look at something that's bad, we look at how it's affecting people or situations in a way that doesn't want to be experienced. And so we label it bad, or we label it good. When we label something from a spiritual perspective, we're giving it a specific power. Now, this is so important because if I label something good, in my mind at least, I'm giving it the power of good. I will interact with that thing based on the power of good. Good inside myself and the expectation of good in whatever it is that I'm interacting with. I will also expect to receive something good from that because I believe it's good. I'm acting from my own good. I'm looking for an expectation of receiving some kind of a result or a circumstance or a situation or a change in environment because I believe that something is good. What's important to know is that the mind is then focused on to find what's actually good about the thing that we're observing. And of course, if you stay focused on that idea, you will always find the good in it. In fact, the good is actually infinite. The longer you keep looking, the more good you will find. Now, conversely, if my mind is labeling something bad, I'm now giving this thing the power of bad or the power of evil. I'm looking at it with my own duality of bad or wrong or evil in my own mind. It's important to know this because that power of evil exists in every human being on the planet based on whatever our belief system is around bad, evil, not good. You label it whatever you want. You have to understand that each one of us is unique and each one of us has our own perception and unique way of determining when something is bad or not good or evil. And when we label it that as an individual, we give that thing a unique power, but it has a power that we gave it. Now, why is that so important? Because if we gave it the power and we did it out of ignorance, we can take that power away from it. Now, think about this. If I label something bad, but the truth of that thing is that it just is, it's not good or bad, then I'm going to react to it in a way that it's bad, which is going to affect my life, which is going to cause my life to be upset in various different ways. I might be psychologically upset. I might be emotionally upset. It may cause upset and chaos in my family, in my personal life, in my business life, in my health. It can wreak havoc everywhere because what I've engaged in is the power that I'm giving it that it's bad. But that power doesn't exist in the thing that I'm observing. It exists in the human being. It exists in each one of us individually. Now, you may have heard me talk on subsequent podcasts. Now, this one, I'm really not sure which podcast I talked to this about. It might have been in the Jordan Peterson podcast. I'm not sure. But the idea is this. One of the things that is very true is that a person will never step into their greatest power to do good without acknowledging greatest power to do evil. And human beings have that power. Every single human being has that power inside of ourselves. That's where you'll have a Christ on one hand, a Gandhi on one hand, a Buddha on one hand, a Martin Luther King Jr. on one hand. And on the other side, you have a Stalin, you have a Pol Pot, you have a Hitler, right? What's the difference between all of these individuals? Well, we have a section of individuals that came into the earth, and their purpose in life was to take their perception of good and spread it amongst mankind, humankind. The other individuals had a perception that was very different. And that perception had an evil connotation to it, but it was based on their perception. It was based on the meaning that they gave to life and people that were different and things that were different and ignorance. So what did they spread? They spread their own evil intention into a circumstance, into an environment, into a situation, into the consciousness of other individuals. That's the kind of power that we have as individuals. Now, how does that relate to the problem that we're actually experiencing right now? Well, the quality of your life is going to be determined by the meaning that you give to your life. And your life consists of everything that is in your environment, in your circumstances, in your results. And environment is people, places, and things. So it's everything that's really surrounding yourself. When you begin to label things from a negative perspective and you label them bad, you're tapping into your own innate power to experience something as a bad thing. Now, when we do that, we give a command to our mind to see what's wrong with something. What's unfortunate for so many people is that we are very much programmed, probably even more so, because of the way that the media is, because of the way movies are, because of what's popular in societal culture. We're programmed to see bad things probably more than we're programmed to see good things. It's very well known that in marketing and advertising, fear sells, right? Fear sells. And it's so popular because people want the ability to feel in control around fear, and they want the ability to know what to do when they're scared. So fear gets a lot of attention. And fear gets a lot of attention because individuals are mostly, not in all cases, but in most cases, they're not raised in a way where They understand their ability to adapt to whatever it is that is happening in their life. They understand their ability to be resourceful. No, it doesn't matter what's happening in their life. They understand their ability to actually think through and problem solve. They don't understand their ability to ask for help and receive help, because it's two very different things. There's some people that can ask for help, but when it comes to receiving it, they can't receive it. So they end up playing a victim card, saying that nobody will help them, when literally they're blocking it because they don't know how to receive it. They don't feel worthy of receiving it. They feel guilty. They've got all kinds of psychological chaos going on where they can't receive. So what ends up happening is that we create our situation based on how we're perceiving something to happen. So what is the solution to this? Well, if we stop looking at the individual circumstances, now we have to really think here, because in the situation that we're in, we have the threat of the virus, which is we're constantly being inundated with that information. It is having a fatal effect on some people. It is spreading very, very rapidly. It's causing carnage all over the world. But it has its own death rate, which, I'm not saying is a good thing. Like, nobody wants to see people die. However, the other devastation that's happening from it is it's ruining the economies, which affect the livelihoods of everybody all over the world. It is now tearing into some families because people are scared. They're living together. They're not able to get a break from each other. They're getting on each other's nerves, and they're projecting anger and hurt and shame and fear onto the people that they love. So it's causing a big problem. And the fear that we're experiencing, the uncertainty that we're experiencing during this time, is primarily coming from the idea that we took the idea that we have to shelter in place, that we have to social distance, that we have this virus, that we may have lost our job, we may have an income that's not coming in, we may be having to put bills on hold, we may be having to lay people off, we may not have money coming in ourselves, and we don't know how long it's going to last. We've given all these things, as they pertain to you as an individual, a meaning. And when that meaning is not a good meaning, then it does not leave us open to making many good choices, because we're focusing on our mind on what's bad, and we're not focusing our mind on what's actually good. So we're giving it the power of destruction. It doesn't have the power of destruction in and of itself. We're giving it that power. And I'm not talking about the virus specifically. I'm talking about the circumstances that have been created by the powers that be in order to stop the spread of the virus. So it's very important to understand that you're exacerbating your experience by giving it a negative meaning. So this is where I want to bring in a couple ideas from two lessons that I've taught on the podcast before, from the wisdom of Thomas Troward. So one of the lessons that I did before was on opulence and beauty, and the spirit of opulence, and also getting into the spirit of a thing. Okay, so let's talk about opulence and beauty for one moment. In those lessons, because I'm not going to teach those specific lessons, I'm just gonna pull some information from them, and then if you want to listen to them, we'll find out what the number of the podcasts were, and we'll let you know so that you can go right to them and listen to the entire lesson. But in opulence and beauty, what Thomas Troward really nailed down in there was that opulence and beauty, if done correctly, is the highest form of human expression. And I'm not talking about vain beauty, and I'm not talking about vain or arrogant opulence. I'm talking about real beauty, real opulence in the world, because it is all within, the idea of that is within the spiritual spectrum of what it is that we understand. When we take opulence and beauty and we make it wrong, we could call it vanity, we could call it arrogance, we could call it narcissism, we could give it all kinds of negative meanings, and then we experience opulence and beauty from a very negative perspective, and that doesn't do us any good. But opulence and beauty, viewed from the correct perspective, will allow us, if we say, where is the opulence and beauty in my situation right now? What ends up happening is that our mind starts focusing on those ideas. It's looking for what's opulent right now and what's beautiful right now. And I think it's a major change in perspective, because what's opulent right now may be very different from what was opulent 4 weeks ago. Okay. There is an opulent universe. There is an abundant universe. It's abundant all the time and it's opulent all the time. But what we have to understand is the structure in which we live has been changed. The rules have changed. The parameters have changed. The idea that, well, like the boundaries have changed in what it is, how we're actually living our life right now. So that means that what was opulent before this happened may not be the same opulence that we're experiencing now. That means that we have to change our meaning of opulence to find the new opulence in how we're actually existing right now. I used the idea that in the Depression that the United States went through many years ago, for a lot of people, opulence and abundance was a loaf of bread and a bowl of soup, or a few potatoes, or, you know, a few scraps of something that they could feed their family because they would get fed for a night. So that was abundance for a day, abundance for a night. And the way that they treated, they were very often grateful for the little bit that they had. And it really it was meager for a lot of people in that place. But if you listen to stories from then, you hear about how grateful people were to be able to have a potato or a piece of fruit or a piece of meat or bread or soup or something, so that they could continue to move forward until the situation of the Depression changed and people could be in a more expansive situation. But all of it is spiritual. So that means that the abundance and the opulence has to be within the new framework of what it is that we're working in. And we're working in a completely new framework now than we ever have before. So we have to start thinking to ourselves from the place of opulence and beauty, what's opulent and beautiful in the framework of how I'm living now, which brings me to Troward's other lesson about getting into the spirit of it. So getting into the spirit of it, we could either, now think about this, we could either get into the negative, mean, angry, hurt, self-pity spirit of what we're experiencing, or we could choose to be in an experience of love and gratitude and joy and compassion and brotherly love, like helping each other. And when we do that, we literally change how we're all experiencing the exact same thing. So another unique thing that's happening right now all over the world is so many people are experiencing the same parameters on their life together. We're all experiencing this together. But if you look around, if you listen, if you talk to people, you will find that the experiences that people are having are very different. It really depends on where we're going, where you go to actually listen to what these people are saying or writing or talking about. And you could tell just by the conversation that they're having, are they experiencing negativity? Are they experiencing bad things that are happening? Because it tells you what their mind is focused on, right? If they're experiencing good things, generally they have good things coming into their life, but it's coming in because they're looking for the good. They're looking for the opulent. So either we get into the spirit of the negativity and the bad, or we get into the spirit of, I'm going to make it through this. I'm going to be okay. I can be resourceful for myself. I can be resourceful for my family. I can be resourceful for the company that I own or the company that I work for. And we become part of the solution when we do that. But understand this. I think this is the most important thing about this lesson. Both the spirit for good, to do good, to have good, to receive good, and the spirit for bad, to have bad, to do bad, to experience bad, Both of those experiences, both of those powers exist in us simultaneously right now, every moment of every day. When we decide to shift our mind from one to the other, we automatically give that we give the thing that we're observing or the situation that we're in the power of our choice to move from one side of the spiritual universe to the other side of the spiritual universe. As we move to the other side of the spiritual universe, we change our perception. We literally change the way that we're experiencing what we're calling this crisis that we're in, this new way of life that we're in temporarily. If I say I'm done experiencing the negativity of this and I decide to make that change, I instantly take my power of bad away from what I'm experiencing and I put it on to good, and that automatically begins to change what's good about this. And it changes my experience. It lifts my spirits. It allows me to feel gratitude, allows me to feel love. It allows me to really understand that I have the power to use the power of this spiritual universe in me. I have that much power in me that I can, by the meaning that I give something, I can literally change my experience instantaneously. I can literally change what I'm manifesting instantaneously in the moment. I can become a benefit to other people. I can do good for other people, in which opens a door for good to come into my life. If I go back over to bad, if I switch that scale and I start to give everything my power of bad, not anybody else's, not the situation doesn't have a power of bad. I'm giving it the power of bad. Then my situation becomes bad and I see bad. And I go into self-pity, and I go into depression, and I go into anger, and I go into sadness, and I go into hopelessness. But I'm doing it. I have that power. We are spiritual beings in a spiritual universe, and it's the only thing that exists. The greatest power that human beings have is the power to choose. And that power to choose gives us the power to give meaning to what we're experiencing right now. So my message is to you is to give it a productive meaning. I don't care how hard it is, right? You all have the ability to do it because you all have the ability to choose. We have to exercise that ability to be able to choose and give it a meaning based on the experience we want to have. If you want to have an experience of money come into your life, if you want to have experience of business growth, if you want to have experience of helping people and being a benefit, taking care of your family, give it that meaning. Do not give it a negative meaning. Refuse to give it a negative meaning, and understand that the spiritual universe is good all the time. It will always give you the meaning that you give something. Think about that. It'll change your life. Thank you for listening. I'd like you to share this with all of your friends. Make sure that you leave comments below, like it, and subscribe. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.